That quiet ribbon of starfire just shaved 65 million kilometers off the trip to Mars. It did it without a single drop of kerosene, without a single explosion, and, until recently, without NASA's permission. The man who stole that distance is the same man who once flew the shuttle more times than anyone alive. This is not the story of a rocket. This is the story of why the astronaut who held every record threw the records away. To build an engine, the establishment still calls Frank's coffee maker. 7 flights, 1,601 hours off-world. The flag on his shoulder has more vacuum time than most satellites. Yet every time the engine's finally cut, the same arithmetic scratches at the back of his skull. At this rate, a voyage to Mars is a 9-month funeral march through invisible spears of cosmic radiation, an equation no amount of heroism can cancel. Chemical fire got us to the doorstep. It will never let us cross the threshold. So, mid-orbit, he quietly closes the checklist, tucks an unauthorized plasma coil sketch into his flight suit, and decides to mutiny, not against Houston, but against the limits of fire itself. By the time Columbia's wheels kiss the runway, his resignation is already typed. The most decorated astronaut in the agency is about to become its most celebrated defector. By the mid-90s, NASA has become a priesthood that worships the controlled explosion. The liturgy is simple. Pack 3.2 million liters of kerosene and oxygen, light the match, and ride the pillar of thunder until Earth's gravity loosens its grip. Every drawing board in the country still worships the same equation. Throw more mass, burn faster, push harder. The shuttle itself, Chang Diaz's office for 7 ascents, is the high altar. 37 million horsepower released in 8 minutes, enough energy to black out the entire eastern seaboard should it ever be wired to the grid. To the engineer sipping weak coffee across the table, anything that cannot duplicate that drum roll is heresy. So when the soft-spoken Costa Rican in the corner booth quietly sketches a 200-kilowatt plasma coil that sips 0.3 milligrams of argon per second, the joke writes itself. Frank's building a coffee maker. The laughter is reflexive, charitable, and, like most laughter inside cathedrals, designed to keep doubt from echoing too long. The arithmetic looks immutable. Chemical rockets top out at 450 seconds of specific impulse, an invisible glass ceiling imposed by the energy stored in molecular bonds. Nuclear thermal doubles that, but Congress would rather fund a toaster on the White House lawn than a reactor strapped to astronauts. Solar electric ion drives reach 3,000 seconds, yet their thrust is gossamer, fine for nudging comet probes, impotent for heaving meat and bone. Between these pillars, the human future is mortared. 6 to 9-month transits to Mars, 600-day surface stays waiting for orbital windows, lifetime radiation dosages that read like cancer lotto tickets. The coffee maker, they insist, lives in the same fantasy bin as fusion-powered Buicks and anti-gravity boots. After all, every equation on the board says the same thing. If you want speed, you need energy. If you want energy, you need mass. If you add mass, you cancel speed. The circle is vicious, eternal, and stamped approved in red ink at the bottom of every mission plan. He has just co-piloted the fastest machine ever repeatedly operated by humans, 27 times the speed of sound, 17,500 miles per hour in the language of the press kit. Yet every orbital sunrise reminds him how small that number is on the scale of the solar system. To reach Mars at shuttle velocity, you would need to keep the engines burning for 43 days straight, an impossibility when the entire vehicle carries only 15 minutes of propellant. The irony is surgical. The more medals NASA pins on his chest, the louder the whisper inside his helmet. This is the finish line of a track that never left the stadium. So he pockets the pride, files the flight report, and begins, privately, to write the obituary of chemical fire. The presentation is supposed to reassure. Instead, it hands Chang Diaz a mortality spreadsheet. A single storm like the one that blacked out Quebec in '89 would deliver, to a crew in a conventional Mars transit habitat, a dose equivalent to 1,000 chest X-rays, every day for a week. The aluminum walls of the proposed crew capsule would shred secondary neutron cascades, turning the ship into a particle snow globe. NASA's answer is classically Apollo. Add more polyethylene, more water, more mass, each kilogram subtracted from the cargo manifest, pushing launch dates to the right like dominoes. He watches the numbers scroll and feels the familiar tug. not fear, but certainty. Chemical architecture has no margin left. Every solution merely reshuffles the same dwindling deck. The meeting adjourns with a polite round of further study. Chang Diaz walks into the Texas night, notebook already open, sketching a magnetic nozzle that would let the ship itself become the radiation shield by getting to Mars before the storm even knows humans left Earth. Step 1. Decline the promotion to Deputy Chief Astronaut, the job custom-built to crown a record holder. Step 2. Cash every scrap of political capital earned across 7 flights and ask for lab space in the back of Building 9, an alcove no wider than a shuttle airlock, where he can plug a 50-kilowatt plasma torch into the grid without setting off accounting alarms. Step 3. Write the letter. The resignation is dated June 25, 2001, effective 2005, 4 years of transition, enough to finish his final flight assignment and avoid the label, quitter. To the press, it reads like a polite retirement. Inside NASA, it feels like apostasy. The agency's most visible son trading a corner office for a converted warehouse off Highway 3, where the only sound is the hum of cryopumps and the occasional pop of argon ice shattering inside a copper coil. He sinks his life savings, $250,000, into a company that does not yet legally exist. The name he registers on the incorporation papers is pure Latin bravado, ad astra, to the stars, because the coffee maker is about to need a cafe tall enough for interplanetary customers. Ad Astra's first corporate asset is a second-hand turbo-molecular pump the size of a Volkswagen, purchased at auction for 38 cents on the dollar from a shuttered semiconductor fab. It arrives leaking oil and memories of the dot-com bust. Franklin Chang Diaz greets it like visiting royalty because without vacuum, the coffee maker cannot even whisper. NASA's direct deposit paychecks stop the same week. His wife's teacher salary keeps the family groceries afloat while the family astronaut becomes a midnight clerk in his own startup, tightening flat flanges with one hand and stirring ramen with the other. The city of Houston, eager to help, classifies the building industrial seafood and demands monthly inspections for crustacean residue. He pays the $150 fee, then wipes shrimp fat off the RF generator. Every morning he parks between refrigerated freight trucks that still smell of low tide and dreams of Mars. To understand the gamble, measure the enemy. Chemical combustion tops at 3,500 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt the engine that created it, so engineers flirt the edge with regenerative cooling and prayer. The coffee maker must sustain 12 million degrees Celsius, 3 times the temperature at the center of the sun, without letting the plasma kiss the wall. A single graze and the chamber vaporizes in 0.0003 seconds, injecting a copper fog that quenches the fire and plates the laboratory in metallic snow. The only defense, magnetic levitation. Radio waves at 150 megahertz, same band used by FM disc jockeys, ionize argon into a glowing fluid, then a 3 Tesla superconducting cage squeezes that fluid into a donut thinner than a human hair but weighing as much as a freight train in kinetic potential. Containment is not hardware. It is a 30,000-amp magnetic prayer that says, move but do not touch. Fail for a millisecond and the fire dies screaming. Succeed, and the same fire becomes a silent river that can push a ship for months without refills. The establishment fires scattershot objections, each one logical, each one lethal if true. Objection 1. Power. Ion engines sip watts, crude ships gulp megawatts. A 200-kilowatt Vasimer would need 4 football fields of solar panels at Earth orbit, twice that at Mars. Impossible. Objection 2. Heat. Superconducting magnets need to sit at minus 269 degrees Celsius, while a plasma sun burns 12 million degrees Celsius 1 centimeter away. Insulation thickness, 0. Impossible. Objection 3. Legacy. NASA's last high-power electric test, the 1960s Nerva nuclear rocket, ended with a cracked core, a congressional hearing, and a warehouse of radioactive gravel. If nukes cannot be trusted, neither can their plasma cousin. Each headline lands like a nail in an unfinished coffin. Chang Diaz reads, clips, files. He does not debate, he engineers. The coffee maker will answer with steam, not press releases. The Great Recession is a chemical fire of its own. banks burning, credit oxidizing, investors evaporating faster than RP1 in a vacuum. Add Astra's burn rate is $180,000 a month, liquid helium for the superconductors, argon feedstock, electricity at industrial demand tariffs, and a single certified welder who earns more per hour than the CEO now pays himself. The venture capital cavalry retreats to cleaner sandboxes, iPhone apps, social coupons, anything that does not require explaining Maxwell's equations to pension funds. By Christmas, the staff shrinks from 23 to 6. Paychecks bounce once, then convert to IOU script handwritten on company letterhead. Chang Diaz flies to Costa Rica, stands in the vaulted atrium of the National Development Bank, and begs for a sovereign loan backed only by equations and a prototype that glows for 90 seconds at a time before the breaker pops. They offer 1.5 million colones, about $3,000, enough to keep the lights on for 6 days. He takes it, flies economy back through Miami, carries the cashier's check in a manila folder because luggage fees cost extra. On New Year's Eve, he stands in the empty lab, magnetic coils humming like distant cicadas, and realizes the company is now one power bill from dissolution. Outside, fireworks celebrate a planet that does not yet know it is stuck. He codifies the gamble into a single metric, cut transit time to Mars from 270 days to 39, an order of magnitude swing that turns radiation dosage from a death sentence into a bad week at the dentist. The number is not pulled from bravado. It is the break-even point where galactic cosmic ray exposure drops below NASA's 3% lifetime cancer risk threshold for a 40-year-old male. Achieve 39 days, and the coffee maker becomes the only crew-rated espresso that serves survival. Fail, and the plasma fire proves itself a toy, pretty but pointless. He pins the post-it above the throttle wheel, a wheel that controls no fire, only the whisper of radio waves and the silent prayer of magnets. Then he calls the remaining staff, 6 engineers, 2 grad students, 1 technician who has not cashed a salary in 8 weeks. Today we either break the tyranny of the rocket equation, or we admit the equations have broken us. They answer by pulling on safety goggles over sleepless eyes. The vacuum pump spools up like a 747 taking off inside a closet. Argon hisses. Superconductors drop to minus 269 degrees Celsius, ribbons of frost racing across copper like white lightning. The countdown reaches 0. No flame. Only the soft blue eye of a star, opening. Listen, no crackle, no afterburner thunder, no mock wave rattling the ribs. Only the whisper of a 150 megahertz voice coaxing argon atoms to shed their electrons and dance in a magnetic bottle thinner than a human hair. 5.4 newtons. If you rested the engine on your palm, it would not register. But in the vacuum of space, that feather nudges a 100-ton stack with the patience of geological time, adding 5 kilometers per second of velocity every 23 days, compound interest paid in the currency of distance. The blue ring is stable for 96 seconds, longer than any previous run by a factor of 4, before the magnet quench detector yanks power and the fire vanishes back into neutral gas. On the control console, a single line of green text freezes. Delta V, equivalent, 65 million kilometers saved on Mars transit. The engineers do not cheer. They exhale months of held breath, the sound of vacuum pumps suddenly loud again. Chang Diaz writes the timestamp in a pocket notebook already scarred by coffee stains and prior failures. 9:47 and 12 seconds, CST, March 18, 2009. Underneath he adds 4 words, half prayer, half contract. 39 days is real. Now the spreadsheet fights back. 6-month chemical trajectory, 180 days under galactic cosmic drizzle, 0.6 to Sievert. 1 in 10 male astronauts will die of cancer decades after ticker tape parades. 39-day, Vassimer sprint, 0.07 Sievert the same. Increase you accept, flying New York-Tokyo, 80 times a year in economy. Propellant mass, chemical needs 1,200 metric tons at LEO, an armada of 9 heavy-lift rockets costing $3 billion before the first astronaut boards. Plasma architecture needs 420 tons, 1 Saturn V-class launch, $600 million, Cargo budget left over for food that does not taste like rehydrated cardboard. Launch windows, chemical Earth Mars free, return hinges on 26-month synodic alignments. Miss one and the nation waits 2 years while program budgets bleed political will. Vasimir's continuous thrust bends the porkchop plot into a 90-day outbound, 90-day return, windows every 8 months. Mars becomes a destination, not a decade. The numbers do not flirt, they mug. Every decimal is a dagger in the heart of the architecture that carried Chang Diaz to orbit 7 times. He prints the slide deck on plain paper, no logo, no flag, and mails it to every center director who once signed his flight pay. Attached is a single yellow sticky. Your best rocket is now my worst obstacle. Victory arrives not with trumpet blasts, but with the soft click of a government pen on commercial letterhead. NASA cannot admit that a record-holding astronaut has outflanked it, so it phrases the surrender as partnership, joint test of high-power electric propulsion to advance future human exploration. Translation: we will plug your coffee maker into our solar arrays and see if it brews survival. The paperwork is 187 pages of liability waivers, export control clauses, and one quiet paragraph that makes Chang Diaz's heart race. NASA shall provide up to 15 kilowatts continuous power allocation on ISS for long-duration firing. 15 kilowatts, 1/10 of the station's entire electrical budget, enough to run the engine for hundreds of cumulative hours, telemetry streamed to every skeptic with a civil service badge. He signs directly below the NASA administrator, date written in the same hand that once logged shuttle OMS Burns. The circle closes. The station he helped assemble becomes the test stand for the engine that will replace every rocket that launched him. January 15, 2013, orbital midnight. While the crew sleeps, the station's power channel 1 diverts electricity into a cable no thicker than a garden hose. Inside the VX-200, argon leaves its cryostat at minus 186 degrees Celsius, meets 150 MHz radio waves, and becomes a ghost-colored river accelerated to 50 kilometers per second. Over the next 18 months, the engine will accumulate 10,000 firing cycles, more starts than every shuttle main engine in history combined, while Earth spins beneath it unaware. Telemetry streams to Houston, specific impulse steady at 4,900 seconds, thrust-to-power ratio 25 millinewtons per kilowatt, efficiency 72%. Numbers that rewrite the textbook chapters the same textbooks once used to fail the concept. Astronauts on interior rounds float past the porthole, see only a faint violet halo flickering against the void, like a neon sign advertising the future, open 24 hours, oxygen not required. By 2015, the design reference mission for human Mars transit defaults to 100 kilowatts of solar electric power driving magnetoplasma engines. The engine that needed 4 football fields of panels now fits inside a launch fairing, thanks to multi-junction cells and folding arrays the size of tennis courts, not cities. Galactic cosmic ray dosage, capped at career limits. Launch mass, within a single SLS, Block 2 lift. Transit time, 39 days outbound, 39 days home. Mars becomes a quarterly commute, not a presidential term gamble. The same administrators who once chuckled at Frank's coffee maker now quote specific impulse figures in budget justifications. No apologies are offered, none are requested. History has a gentler etiquette. It simply rewrites the next page and footnotes the laughter. He never returns to the cockpit. He does not need to. Every future Mars crew will ride an engine he financed with second-hand pumps, teacher salary groceries, and a stubborn refusal to outrun the mathematics of mortality. The 39-day crossing he etched in a notebook becomes the maritime route of a species no longer confined to one tide pool of the cosmos. One day, children who speak Spanish, Mandarin, Yoruba, or Martian Creole will learn that the first step toward another world began not with a bigger bomb, but with a quieter fire, an engine that forgot to roar. And if they listen closely, past the static of interplanetary chatter, they might still hear it. A blue whisper circling Earth every 90 minutes, 10,000 times, saying the same thing: move, but do not touch the walls. The fire you cannot see is already ahead of you, lighting the next 65 million kilometers. He spent 40 years squeezing another 5 seconds of specific impulse out of hydrogen-oxygen marriage. Now he watches the sapphire donut on the monitor and feels the same chill generals tasted when the first ironclad sank a wooden flagship. No press release admits defeat. Instead, the language shifts to hybrid architectures and dual-mode propulsion. But in the cafeteria, over coffee brewed, ironically, by the same brand machine that once inspired the joke, the old guard mutters, "We laughed in 2003, we're not laughing now." The sentence is never written in an official document. It does not need to be. History has already footnoted their laughter. 7 shuttle flights, 1,601 hours in space. 1 startup, 18 years, 423 lab employees, 11,000 engine firings, 87 patents, 0 fatalities. Net reduction in Mars transit time, 231 days per crew. Net reduction in cancer probability, 0.55, lifetime risk erased per astronaut. He never walked on the red planet, but every future footprint will press soil already worn by an engine that bears his initials in the alloy of its first magnetic coil. The metals stay in a drawer, the numbers stay in the vacuum where they belong. He locks the hangar, turns off the lights, and leaves the pump running, because tomorrow's test schedule is already booked by a customer whose logo is a stylized crescent Earth. Remember the astronaut who floated upside down in Colombia, staring at an altitude readout that refused to climb? Today that same man watches a different number, specific impulse 4,900 seconds, climb without limit, because the fire it measures no longer cares how high Earth's atmosphere stretches. The ceiling he hit at 298 kilometers has become a floor. The coffee maker thesis has become the departure lounge. And somewhere above us, every 90 minutes, a silent blue ring circles the planet he once rode on pillars of thunder, whispering the same lesson. When the fire you know runs out of breath, build the fire you cannot see. They laughed at the coffee maker. Now the coffee maker is the gate to the stars.